Good evening, folks, and welcome to the New York Roadrunners Run Center today. Just want to give you a heads up, there will be no live stream, but we are recording this session, so it'll be available on YouTube at a later time. So welcome tonight to the first of a three-part series of training panels for the New York City United Airlines NYC half. So this session today will be focusing on how you can get the most out of your NYC half training. As I mentioned, there is no live stream, so we apologize for that due to technical difficulties. This session is being recorded, so you'll have the training panel to refer to at a later time, or the folks that can't join us in person, they can watch the recording at a later time as well. So to begin, just some logistical information for those who are here on site. We do have accessible and gender-neutral restrooms that are behind us around the corner. And if you need an assistive listening device and you did not request one, you are more than welcome to ask our colleagues that are at the desk to my right. And there will be closed captioning available on the video that is being recorded, which again will be available at a later time on New York Roadrunners YouTube page. So please feel free to utilize that. Just a warning that the closed captions are auto-generated. And we will have a Q&A section portion of this training panel. So for about 45 minutes or so, we have some prepared questions that we'll speak to the panelists about. And then Coach Gemma will come around. For those of you in the audience who have questions, feel free to ask them at that time. So please hold on to your questions until then. Who am I? Why am I here? I recognize some of your faces. Some of you are here every time, and it's always lovely to see you. My name is Saman Wakad. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Social Responsibility Specialist here at New York Roadrunners. I get to have the pleasure of interviewing our panelists every time. I'm a runner wannabe, so I have no shame in asking the questions that some pro runners may not want to, just for your sake. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our wonderful panelists. You are actually here to listen to them, not really me. Actually, before we introduce the panelists, we do physical descriptions for the folks here in person who might be blind or low vision, or those watching the recording at a later time. So I am a South Asian woman. I am wearing thick-rimmed glasses. I have a black or gray beanie on with the United Airlines NYC half logo on the front. I also have a gray headscarf, a blue fleece with the New Balance and New York Roadrunners logos on the right and left in white. So to my left is Coach Ben Delaney. Ben is an RRCA certified coach. He grew up playing team sports and came to running later in life. He was inspired by a friend and just jumped into the deep end of the running pool. He saw quickly the power of running with groups and how the combination of speed work, long runs, and easy runs creates an efficient running program and roadmap for success. He took that information and knowledge and started to work with other runners, and he says that the best word to describe the feeling of seeing runners achieving their success is magical. Ben will be pacing the 2-hour group at this year's United Airlines NYC half. Ben?
That sounds a lot better than reality, let's be honest.
No, I work with Ben, I know.
Exactly, I'm not that cool. Just down there for your reading. So thank you so much. Now, my name is Ben. I am a white male with somewhat left of black hair on top of my head, a lot big furry gray beard. I'm wearing a dark blue fleece, says Coach on it. But yeah, thanks for being here. Looking forward to it. This is hands down my favorite NYRR race, and I will keep saying that all night.
And he's not just saying that, so we'll talk to him a little bit about that later. To Ben's left, we have Amy Stevens. Good to have Amy back here again. Amy is a registered dietitian, certified specialist in sports nutrition, eating disorder specialist, and competitive runner. She has over 20 years of experience working with amateur and high-performing Olympic-level athletes to achieve their sports performance goals using the latest science-backed approaches. Currently, Amy serves as team dietitian for Empire Elite Track Club, which is a high-level group of athletes focused on making the U.S. Olympics team, as well as the NYU track and field team. Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Stevens. I have brown hair, shoulder length, and a tan sweater.
Thank you, Amy. And last but not least, we have Mohammed Saad. Mohammed is a physical therapist with HSS, which is Hospital for Special Surgery, and is focused on the treatment of surgical and non-surgical orthopedic clinical cases. He enjoys treating patients across the age and ability spectrum and finds fulfillment in helping individuals get back to their daily activities, and athletes of all disciplines get back to their preferred sport. Mohammed also works with the performance team at HSS, conducting running mechanics assessments in the hopes of preventing overuse injuries, which will be beneficial for those of us here. As an avid runner and triathlete, he is passionate about helping fellow endurance athletes meet their athletic goals, and Mohammed will be running this year's United Airlines NYC Half. Mohammed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mohammed. I am a Middle Eastern male. I'm wearing a dark blue beanie, and I'm wearing a fuzzy green sweatshirt with a brown pocket on the front.
Thank you, Mohammed. It's always weird trying to figure out, wait, what am I wearing? How do I describe it? So we hope we did a good job there. So let's get right into it, right? Does anybody know what date the race is?
Soon.
Is everybody sure? It's like 2 people in this crowd. Okay, folks.
I'm curious to know too. I can't remember you.
Our coach should definitely know. The date is March 16th, and we're about, I think, 9 weeks out, right? So to begin, how many folks here have run this race before? Okay, a few hands. How many folks have run a half marathon before? Okay, about maybe a third to half of the room.
First time doing NYC half? Anyone first time? There we go.
Nice.
Best day ever.
Nice.
Yeah, oh, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So now we have an idea of who is in the room besides us. So folks, we are, as I said, about 9 weeks out from the United Airlines NYC Half for 2025. So let's talk about the most important thing that you'll need to know to prepare for this race, right? Coach Ben, we'll start with you. From a coach's perspective, what should new runners be doing to make sure that they can get the most out of the next 9 weeks? Is this going to be different from those who've done a half marathon before, but not necessarily, this one?
Yeah, I don't know if it's anything different per se. Obviously, with a new runner, this is all new. Like anyone first-time half marathoners, just real quick. Yeah, so you have no idea what you're about to get into. You're probably wondering why the hell you wanted to do this. Let's be honest here. It's really cold outside, and it sounded fun when I got into the drawing, whenever that was, when it was 65 degrees. But yeah, I think when you look at a first-timer, it's understanding that there's going to be growth, but there's going to be speed bumps. Anyone who's trained for long distance before knows it's not a linear the process is not going to be a straight line front to back. So always give yourself grace. And days off are okay. You don't have to run every single day. You've got time to get there because you want to get to the start line healthy. I will preach that as a coach. So the day I cannot run myself is if you can't get to the start line with the chance to run your race, then you've not done yourself any favor. So get yourself there in one piece. Then you've given yourself the best shot, whether you've done this 4 or 5 times, 10 times, or your first time. So just look at that over the next 9 weeks. Where can you make your most physical gains? Is that in just getting better endurance, or is that in getting faster? Typically, with the first time, I tell people, just try to get your endurance up, because that's what you're going to need, because you're going to be on your feet for a substantial amount of time, longer than probably you've ever run before. It could be upwards of well over 2 hours. So I just tell people, get used to being on your feet, and don't forget that you have to eat. That is your fuel. So understand that you may be eating and consuming more calories. Just make sure they're good calories. I mean, I love ice cream, I love potato chips, I love cookies, but I also know I've got to have greens on my plate, and my wife reminds me every day of that. So thank you for that, honey. But yeah, take care of yourself. Enjoy the process. Even when it's cold outside, just enjoy it, because then you're finding the joy. If it's a drag to be out there, then it becomes harder and harder to do it. And there will be days that are going to be more challenging, especially as your long runs get longer, or if you're doing speed work, those harder days are going to really test you. But I can tell you from my own experience, and I think anybody who's been up here, if you trained for a race, you've done it before, you're probably going to feel pretty good when you're done with that workout. You're never going to be like, oh, why did I just do that? Oh, I feel good because you found something new about yourself. I think that's really what new runners experience the most, is you find a new level, a new piece of you in your growth, in your journey as a runner. And I think that's a special place to be, because after you run for a while, sometimes you want to go back to maybe how fast you were a few years ago and you're not there anymore. And yeah, I think we're all kind of like,
look at me.
Yeah, I'm looking at Muhammad also, myself, but you do that. So I always say, just judge yourself for where you are in the moment and for today, and enjoy the process for sure.
Wonderful. Get ready and enjoy the process.
Definitely.
Okay, Mohammed, talk to us about what are some things runners should be doing to stay healthy during this 9-week training period?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm going to echo Coach Ben's statements about take care of your body, right? You've got 9 weeks, regardless of where you are in your training cycle. You still have quite a bit of time before the race. So definitely start listening to your body now. If you're having some small, minor, major aches and pains, listen to that. If it requires maybe some medical attention, or you want to seek the advice of a medical professional, now's the time to do that, to determine, is it safe for me to continue my training, or is this something that maybe is going to sideline me temporarily so that I can achieve maybe some summer or some fall goals. So don't necessarily think, oh, I need to train through an injury, or I'll worry about this after the training process. You still have 9 weeks, so if it's something minor and you can take care of it and still make it to race day healthy, great. If not, and it's something that's going to sideline you for a little bit, it's better to take care of it now than have that, rear its head closer to race day and maybe prolong an injury. So listening to your body, taking care of yourself. Couple other things. Strength training, right? As runners, it's something that we all notoriously neglect, right? If we are limited on time, if you work a 40-hour work week and you're limited on time and you're a runner, you prioritize running. I will encourage everyone to make time for that strength training for a couple of reasons. One, not only will it benefit your performance if you're looking to, hit a certain goal or improve a previous time that you've run, strength training can be that, that small supplement that takes you over the edge and gets you a little bit better performance. The other thing is injury prevention. Right, I'm the worst at this, where if I'm tight on time, I'm going to prioritize my long run over spending a little extra time in the gym. But in hindsight, I know that a little bit more time in the gym, a little bit more time strength training is going to benefit me in the long run by keeping me injury free. A lot of the research indicates that it only takes about 6 weeks of structured strength training to see some marginal gains. So with the race being 9 weeks out, that tells you, if you start now, you could see some marginal gains in your performance by the time race day comes. So my overall advice for staying healthy, taking care of your body from now until March 16th is if you have something come up, if you feel any aches or pains, go ahead and get those addressed. Whether it's something that you know how to manage, you can manage on your own, or if it needs the advice or counsel of a healthcare professional, go ahead and book that appointment, see someone now. And then also, if you can, if you have the time or if you have the resources, go ahead and start implementing some form of strength training into your routine.
Awesome. Thank you, Mohammed. Amy, we're coming to you. So Coach Ben touched on this very slightly, but how is nutrition going to play into these early weeks of training for folks? And what should they be looking for in regards to nutrition at this point?
I'm so glad to get to talk to you guys at this stage of the training, and I'm glad I get to talk. So I think what's exciting is that you have this whole 9-week block ahead of you, and what we need to look at is that this is a training block. That means over the course of the next 9 weeks, your training is going to be changing every week or every 2 weeks. And as Mohammed said, you're going to hopefully be incorporating some strength as well. So how you are right now with your fitness and your expenditure is going to be very different every single week. So we need to match your food intake to your expenditure. And I think one of the most common things I see is that people do not change their eating. And they end up feeling really hungry or big gaps in their fueling, right? Has anyone ever felt super hungry when they start training? Yes, right. So I think recognizing that you are going to be increasing your expenditure with running, with your other cross-training activities, and in addition to your daily routine that you're already doing. So recognize that you need to be eating more. And what does that look like? You might need to keep your 3 meals up. Maybe now is not the time to be skipping lunch, or if you know that you have meetings coming up and that's the hardest meal for you, you need to plan around that. Be a little bit more intentional about getting those foods in and getting those calories in. If you're doing your morning workouts, you're going to be a lot hungrier later in the afternoon, and so you maybe want to plan some snacks. Like, be ahead of this, not behind it. You'll know that you're ahead of your fueling when you're feeling good on your runs and feeling recovered. If you're feeling tired before you even start, we need to stop and reassess what's going on. Maybe like Mohammed said, maybe you have a niggle or some type of injury that's kind of starting. Maybe you're under-fueled. And if you're under-fueled, that can lead to injuries. Fueling properly, like eating those 3 meals and maybe adding in 2 to 4 snacks a day, is going to keep your muscles firing. And if those muscles are firing, you're going to be much less likely to have an injury. There's more pressure that's going to be put on those muscles, and they're going to be able to support you. But if you're under-fueled and those muscles are fatigued and you're pushing through that, you're going to put much more strain on your ligaments, your tendons, and that's where those injuries start to develop. So be intentional about your fueling and match the expenditure.
Thanks, Amy. I had a follow-up question, but we're going a little bit more in depth with this anyways. So for the next part, we'll talk about what your training plan should look like with 9 weeks out, right? We touched briefly on what some of the most important things are in regards to their expertise. So Amy, actually, I'll just go back to you on this. Talk about the runner's long run, which is going to be key for a lot of runners. some of the folks here may not have had a long run like that, right? Because they haven't run a half marathon. What should runners take before they head out the door? And is there a difference between types of gels, bars, goos out there? Some folks may have not taken these things yet. And can real food be a substitute? It's a lot happening.
I'm gonna keep
And
referring
recovery
back to
nutrition.
this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the first part. What should we do? What should we eat before we head out the door? So this is one of the most common things that I talk about in my practice. If runs are greater than 70 minutes, I go by time because our bodies, it's a lot easier to go by time because our paces are going to be fluctuating and they're different for everybody. So our bodies have enough energy stored for about 90 minutes. Depending on the intensity of that workout, it's around 90 minutes. And after 90 minutes, we run out of fuel, kind of like a car runs out of gas. And if you've ever run longer than 90 minutes or towards the end of one of those longer runs and you felt terrible, like your legs are heavy, they're lead, and you can't get them off the ground. Has anyone ever felt that? I absolutely have in Van Cortlandt Park. So we've all experienced that. So that is called hitting the wall. Your body has run out of stored fuel and it cannot function anymore. So we want to avoid that. So the best way to avoid that is practicing on these long runs, because these long runs are going to mimic your race day. So you want to fuel beforehand. Long runs are typically on the weekend for most people, so you have an opportunity to practice that race day plan. So you want to eat something about 2 hours before if you can. Not many of us are getting up that early, so you're probably closer to 1 hour. So at 1 hour, you're looking at something about 50 grams of carb, which could be like 2 slices of bread and some protein to help slow that digestion. And that does vary by individual based on weight. So if you're in a larger body, then maybe you can tolerate a little bit more food. And you have to test this out. I'm just giving you a very brief guideline that's based on science, but some of us might need a little bit more and some might need a little bit less. You have to see what feels best for you. So 9 weeks out, you have plenty of opportunities to try this out, to see what feels best. And then during your run, if you're running more than 90 minutes on race day, which many of us are, you're going to need 30 to 60 grams of carb an hour. So it's probably going to be about 2 gels. So these gels, I'll go into gels, are these little packets of easily digestible carbohydrate. That's your fuel. And it's in these really convenient little pouches. There are tons of them, and they all have different properties. They're different based on texture, based on type of sugar. Some have electrolytes, some have caffeine. I would say run with a group and ask everyone what they're using and start there. Sometimes I'll show up to a run with some friends with a bunch of different gels and we just swap. And you might want to just try a couple to see which feel the best. Some are like a Jell-O consistency, the Martin gel. And some people do not love that. That is a very strange texture. You also have to practice opening it. Is this something that's easy for you to open and easy for you to carry on your body? Right, you're laughing. Have you had problems opening? Who hasn't? And in the winter, it's going to be cold, right? So those gels can get a little bit hard, to be honest. They get a little frozen. So not frozen, but they'll get a little bit more firm. So you want to like maybe keep it on an inner pocket or in your bra, like so your body heat. You don't want to chew. I wouldn't use a chew, actually, on race day unless you have an inner pocket, because those are like rock hard when it comes time. And if it's a cold day, then it's going to be a lot harder. So I think I covered all those questions.
Can real food be a substitute for the gels?
Oh, so
and the
real
goos?
food. Yeah, so the difference between real food and those gels, the gels are really designed to be easily digested. When you are running, all of the blood supply in your body is going to your working muscles and your heart and your lungs, and it is diverted away from your gut. So whatever food is in your stomach is going to cause a stomach ache. That is why it's important to eat like an hour before you go out for a run, and you want that food fully digested. Low-fat, low-fiber foods are the best. If you eat solids during your race, that requires digestion. It requires enzymes, and your body has to actually work to digest that. Those gels are specifically designed to get absorbed without having to use your gut. So there is definitely a lot of advantages to that versus real foods. Some people swear by real foods, and I could talk a little bit more about that, but for the most part, I would stick with the gels.
And did we touch on recovery nutrition?
Do you want to do that right now? Okay. Sure. So recovery nutrition.
There's a lot when it comes to food.
Okay, there's a lot. So When you do a run or any type of workout, your body is using up glycogen, and depending on the intensity, will determine how much glycogen you use. And if you are doing a strength workout, which hopefully you will be, thanks to Mohammed for reminding us, if you're doing a strength workout, you're shredding your muscles. You're literally breaking them down. And that is the purpose of a workout. And then afterwards, not just strength, but also your long runs in any workout that you do, afterwards, within an hour, your muscles are primed and your body is primed to absorb all of the nutrition from food at a much faster rate. So you want to replace, like refill the tank. And if you eat foods within that hour, you're going to refill it faster, you'll feel better the rest of the day, and you will get stronger. So foods that would be great right after a run are a combination of carbohydrates and protein. So within an hour, like instead of answering emails, like eat your food first. Seriously, eat first, and then do whatever you have to whatever you need to do. But yogurt with fruit. So the yogurt is your protein, and then have some fresh fruit as your carbohydrate. It could be toast with peanut butter, oatmeal with peanut butter, or maybe eggs and toast. So you really want to take advantage. It's called the glycogen window. You want to take advantage of that because then it starts the recovery. Your body's already digesting those nutrients, and they're delivered directly to your working muscles and into your body without you doing anything. You don't have to take any specialized protein supplements or any other things. Just use real food and just have it prepped and ready.
Okay, great. I know that was a lot of information. We don't expect you to memorize this. You can go back and watch the recording if you'd like, but this is really great information to have at the beginning of a lot of folks' training plan. Coach Ben will go to you next. How should folks be picking a training plan if they don't have one? Is a training plan different from a running coach? And are either of them needed? Are you needed as a coach?
I'm not needed. Food's more needed than I am, I think. Bacon, egg, and cheese is my favorite post-long run. I don't know, is that appropriate or not?
Yeah, you know what? I always say, like, get bacon, egg, and cheese. I mean, maybe not every single time.
It has protein?
It is protein, but
No.
Is that okay? I mean, so I would look at the whole day. Like, you really want to look at the context. What else are you having in your day? If that's your one favorite thing and it gets you to eat, I have a lot of runners that are nauseous after running, and I tell them to eat what seems appealing to them. So yes, that would be okay.
That would be perfect. Yeah, but it comes to a training plan or anyone to help you, the way that we look at it, you want a roadmap. Everyone talks about accountability, especially in these conditions outside. What's going to get you out the door? Is it a training plan? Is it a group run? Is it your friend? What do you need to help keep you on track? Because at the end of the day, you're all running 13.1 miles, and you want to have the most success at that. So when you look at ways to hopefully achieve your goal, yeah, anything that you can do to help. Obviously through NYRR, we have group training. They're out there in the park right now doing a tempo run. If you prefer a virtual training, we have NYRR by Runna. That is a fantastic plan to use. If that way, it gives you a roadmap. It's on your phone. You can use your Apple Watch or your Garmin, and it's programmed all right there, and it will tell you what to do and when to do it. So we all want the roadmap because at the end of the day, that's going to help you hopefully achieve what you want because you have to hit the marks to get there. I mean, I don't know, no one that I know of can wake up tomorrow and just run a half marathon. Maybe anyone up here can. I try, and it's not very successful. But you want to have those accountabilities when you're there, and so you want that. The nice thing about having a coach is that, I'm sure Amy can echo this, is it's someone to talk to. I think sometimes as a coach, maybe you're almost more psychological than physical. You're kind of giving some mental prep. They ask so many people ask questions. Even as a runner, I have questions. I want to know how I can improve what I'm doing. Or what's the intent? Like a lot of the runners that I talk to, a coach gives them a workout, and they tell them what the workout is, and I'm like, that's interesting. I go, what's the intent with that? Why are you doing that? And I tell people, just like Ted Lasso says, be curious, ask questions. It's going to help you learn, and it'll also help you give you information on why. I mean, Amy's given great information about the nutritional, why you want to take those things. So if you are working with a coach, ask the questions. Don't just take it verbatim because sometimes coaches will give you information based off of what should work for everybody, but each one of us is different. There are certain things that we can all do to get better, but understand that we are individuals and how we can accomplish what we do and what your needs are could be different, what your needs are. So don't just think that what someone gives you is the only way to do it. But yeah, those plans and the coaches can help you get there. It increases your education. And then it'll help you if you continue to run. Because I mean, a half marathon for a lot of people is probably a springboard towards the marathon, Lord help you if you want to go that direction, but it's a fun day if you want to do it. I mean, Muhammad did it this past year. It was a good day. Amy's done a lot of them, the triathlons. But it is. I mean, that's part of the journey. We want to challenge ourselves. A lot of people feel that they want to go longer than faster, which is fine. But anywhere you are in your space, having people you can talk to get information from, whether it be about strength or PT, or the nutrition part of it, or a coach to help you through, it's all good info. And don't be afraid to ask questions and find people out there that fit who you are, because that's the important piece, is that making sure you find what works best for you, whether it's in person, a virtual, a paper training plan, but any of those tools can help you, again, get to your start line.
Awesome. And if folks are interested in learning about individualized group training or individual training through Rana or our group training program, how can they do that?
On the website, nyrr.org, under our training, we have both of those right now. So obviously, if you want to get started on that, Rana offers, I think we have our 12-week training plan up there for Rana right now, so you can get started with that, which is fantastic. Group training just started. We have 10 weeks. We go right up to the NYC half. Any of you who maybe got into Brooklyn, if you got into the Brooklyn half as well, we have training plans for that up there as well. All those are available right now on the site. You can go check them out, get started, because, again, you want to get there and have the best experience.
And if you also got into Brooklyn, you're going to have a very fun first half of the year. Okay, Mohammed, talk to us about how runners should decide whether they should see a physical therapist or their doctor for an injury instead of just, waiting it out, doing some home remedies.
Yeah, great question. So there's really no bad time to see a physical therapist, but there's definitely a better time to see a physical therapist. So in general, let's say you have absolutely no pain whatsoever. You could still theoretically benefit from going to see a physical therapist, maybe do a running mechanics assessment, see, am I, prone to having a running injury in the future if I'm running a certain way? Speak with a coach. Is my plan sustainable, to avoid a running injury? Am I doing too much too soon, or am I not doing enough to get me through the race? So with regards to physical therapy, again, there's no bad time to see a physical therapist, just to go kind of get a general assessment, see if there are areas of improvement. But generally, people will go see a physical therapist if something is wrong. So let's kind of address that side of things. I will generally say if you have a small minor ache or pain and you're training for a race, it's probably a little bit wiser to address that issue earlier on, as opposed to ignoring it and thinking, let me stop, not necessarily see someone until it gets bad enough to where I can't run anymore. Because at that point, it's usually too late. Right? Let's say you have a very minor ache or pain now, you're doing some of your shorter runs, and you're thinking, I'm getting through these 5-mile runs fine, but I'm starting to feel a little pain, I'll just ignore it. Imagine how that's going to feel when you get up to maybe 7 or 8 or 9 miles. That issue is just going to continue to compound. And you don't want to get to, 2 weeks out from the race where you've put in all this time and all this effort and you're feeling really excited for the race and then realize, oh, it's a little too late. Now there's really nothing I can do to remedy this issue. So I would say, again, similar to my answers to the first question, listen to your body. If it's something that you think is totally manageable, it bothers me a little bit, I can run through it, listen to your body and maybe make the wiser decision to get a little bit of guidance, get some advice. But if it's something that you absolutely know is, potentially detrimental to your health or is going to prevent you from accumulating more miles, that is the absolute perfect time to see a healthcare professional about that. So overall, if you're not feeling any pains and you have the time and the resources, go see a physical therapist, see if there's anything you can do to optimize your performance. If you are having small aches and pains, now is the time to, get a consult, get some advice, see if there's something that you can do now to avoid maybe missing a race or further injuring yourself.
And whether folks are interested in seeing a physical therapist for a general assessment or if they have potential injury, is HSS a place that they can go to for either?
Absolutely. HSS is really a wealth of resources, right? So we have physical therapists, we have nutritionists, we have performance specialists. So regardless of your level of performance or your goals, there's probably someone at HSS that we can direct you to get the appropriate, level of attention. So for example, if you have an ache or a pain and you need to see a sports medicine physician to get further diagnostics, there's an area of specialty for that. If you have something that you need to go and see a physical therapist for and maybe get a little bit of guidance on stretches or strength training or something to address that injury, we have resources for that. If you're just looking to optimize your performance and you say, I'm running perfectly fine, I have no aches or pains, but I feel like my running form isn't the best. I observe other people running and their stride looks so much smoother than mine. The performance team would be glad to help you with that. I help out with something called running mechanics assessments. So I have both injured and non-injured runners come to me and say, hey, I would really like for you to kind of take a very objective look at how I'm running and tell me, is there anything I can change, whether to remedy this injury that I've had for years or this injury that keeps coming up, or is there something that I can do, maybe strength-wise or small modifications to my form to prevent me from getting injured in the future? So HSS has a wealth of resources. You can either check us out online or come talk to me afterwards. I would be happy to connect you with the appropriate resource.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mohammed. So, folks, now we're going to turn a little bit and talk about long mileage, because for especially those of you who've never done a half marathon before, this may be the first time that you are building up mileage and you're a bit in, foreign territory. So Amy, we'll start with you this time. Some things runners are going to struggle with in general is nutrition, but especially as they're building up their mileage, it is something that they'll probably struggle with. What can runners do now to prepare for those long, hard miles later in their training program?
So I touched on this a little bit earlier about how to fuel for the longer runs. So I think one thing to just keep in mind is the 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. So you look at how long you're planning to run, and you want to hit 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate. And the reason for that is to prevent hitting the wall. You don't want to wait either to take it. You want to start on the earlier side. So I would start your fueling within 30 to 45 minutes. You don't want to start when you feel bad. And I have a lot of athletes that have done that. Well, I started to feel tired at mile 10, so I took a gel. It's too late. It's like the train has left the station. Your body is already depleted, and it's very hard to kind of go backwards. So the purpose of taking in those gels and the fuel during the run is to preserve your muscle glycogen for as long as possible. And when your glycogen becomes depleted, that's when fatigue starts to set in. And your body tells you, our bodies are designed to survive and to keep us going for as long as possible. So when your glycogen is depleted, your body is going to tell you to slow down. And that's the fatigue that you feel. So if you can preserve that glycogen for as long as possible, that sense of fatigue is going to be delayed, and it'll be a lot more fun to run through Manhattan. You'll have a better experience on the FDR than if you don't start fueling. You should have had, I can't remember the exact route, but I was going to say to have a gel by Chinatown. Like maybe by Chinatown, is that about right?
Yeah, that's about 10K mark.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, so around there, yeah, so that's what I would recommend. And some people, so, going through race day, like now is, as I mentioned before, now is your time to practice your race day fueling plan. Write it down. Keep a notepad in your kitchen, because that's where the food is. That's probably a little easier than having to write it on your Strava where you'll never find it. I can never find my Strava entries. So put it somewhere where you're going to remember and it's going to be easy to access, and write down the time that you ate and the food and then how you felt. So for me and many of my athletes, toast with peanut butter and a little bit of honey, because honey is easily absorbed. So a tablespoon or two of honey, and a banana, because that also has electrolytes. So that works for many people, but it may not work for you, and you may hate peanut butter. So there are lots of different options. Oatmeal is also a great option. And you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Like, it's not great to compare. Like, what might work for one person may not be great for you. Maybe you need a Cliff Bar, and that is the only thing that works on your stomach. So let's touch on stomach and GI issues for long runs. So that's one of the more common issues that I hear, is that stomach upset. The first thing that I would say about, or what I tell a client when they tell me they have GI issues during the run, is, are you hydrated? So being dehydrated reduces your blood volume. So any food you eat and you put in your body is going to cause a GI issue. So the first and foremost thing is to make sure that you're hydrated. So when you're having your pre-run meal, 10 to 20 ounces of fluids is what you want to be sipping. There's no chugging water, and you cannot catch up if you're dehydrated, because it takes that much time for your body to absorb the water. So you don't want to chug too much at once, and coffee does count towards that. So if you have a cup of coffee that's around, like mine is a very large mug, so I probably get all my fluids, and then I take some sips of water before I head out. And then during is very independent. Everyone has a different amount of sweat that they lose during a run. So if you're running solely on the treadmill, which I have been, then you're sweating at a different rate than you would be if you're outside and it's very cold. So pay attention to that. See how you feel. See how your body feels. Do you need more fluids? And then play around with electrolytes. Now is the time. You've probably heard everyone talking about electrolytes, or maybe you've never even heard of them. So electrolytes are these minerals that are lost through our skin in sweat. So if you are sweating, you are losing electrolytes. Sodium being the most prominent one that you want to replace. If you eat really well and follow a very healthy eating plan, you probably are not getting a lot of electrolytes or sodium. So you may need to consider adding them. And there's lots of different forms. There's powders, there's pills, there's all different ways to get that in. But electrolytes you're just replacing what your body has lost. So that's really helpful. One way to know, like the difference between underfueling and underhydration is if you're underfueled, your legs are really heavy. And if you need electrolytes, then it's like your mental focus goes off. You can't do simple math. So if you're feeling like you can't do 2 + 2 or something like that, if you can't focus, and has anyone experienced that? Yeah, so you've experienced it. And it's usually towards the end of a workout or run or an indoor workout where you're losing a lot more than you anticipate. So it's that mental focus goes off. And that can definitely be electrolytes. So experiment. You can, if a friend has electrolytes, borrow, or get a sample. Like Noon tablets are pretty easy. They're just these tablets that you put in water, and see how that makes you feel. That's not harmful. And I would say now is the time to start experimenting with that.
Great. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of information, but it's good to have it now before you go through your training plan. And it's good to know these things now instead of showing up on race day and trying to eat some citrus fruit, which Coach Ben can tell you about later. So, okay, we talked a lot about nutrition. Coach Ben, we didn't talk to you yet on this, did we?
I don't think so.
I was paying attention very well to that nutrition portion, so I lost track.
I think we're up on this
Coach Ben, so the distance of the long runs, it's going to be a bit daunting for folks, right? I mean, running in this weather is daunting for anybody, but then you add on the long runs. How do you coach them to build up to that distance?
Yeah, for me, and Amy touched on it earlier with how she works with her runners. Running by time, I find, is very advantageous because it breaks it down a lot easier. You all have to run 13 miles, obviously, on race day. But if I told you to go run out and run for 50 minutes as opposed to 5 miles, some people, 50 minutes sounds shorter than 5 miles. Some people, that sounds different. So I am, like Amy and they talked about earlier, I am a time-based runner because depending on how you're feeling, and sometimes the fueling will play into this, if I told someone to go run 5 miles and they're already tired, things are not going well, that will seem like forever because you're not going to stop at 4.5 miles. You're going to go for 5 miles, whether you're supposed to or not, and that could lead to an injury, and then you're going to see Muhammad. We don't want to. So, but if I go run for 50 minutes, I don't care how far you run in 50 minutes. Just go run comfortably for 50 minutes. You can figure that out, whether you're having a good day or a bad day. You determine at that point how hard you run or how hard you should run, and you're going to get it done. Now, you may achieve different goals. You may just be like, hey, today I'm checking the box. Because it goes to a lot of different things because anybody's out there knows you're going to have ups and downs in your training. So really when I work with runners, I talk about where you are right now. Don't worry about where you're going to be. Focus on the now. Focus on where you are today with your training because the long run is going to build your aerobic capacity. That's what you're feeding that fire. It's like I call it coal. And when you want to burn that low burning fuel, that fat metabolism that we do, that's that low and slow aerobic based running that we're doing where I can talk to the person next to me for as long as I need to. And also, I look at the long runs as you go through your training, being more intentional about what the long run is for. Will we be doing targeted pace miles? Are we taking our gels and how we feel when we're doing that? Because all of that will play into, because eventually I like to look at my long runs like dress rehearsals for race day. I'm going to get up at the time that I want to get up at race day, eat what I want to eat at the time I'm going to do it, emulate maybe how long it's going to take before I actually start to run. So it can be an hour and a half before I run. Is it 2 hours before my race time? What's it going to take? So I start to practice all of that. How much am I going to wear? What am I going to wear? There's a certain point where I'm wearing the same exact clothes every Saturday morning because that's just what I'm practicing, exactly what I want to wear, how it's going to feel because I want to know that. And then also practicing all the different gels I may be taking. Do I need one every 20 minutes? Is it every 40 minutes? Is it sooner than that? Also looking at the NYC half course, this course is not flat. Anyone who's done the Airlines NYC half course, it is not flat. You start on Washington, you go down, you go up and around Flatbush, you're into Prospect Park, up Battle Pass Hill, down Atlantic Avenue, over the Manhattan Bridge, on the FDR, which rolls, and then your final 5K is up past the UN, through Pershing Square, behind Bryant Park, into Times Square, up 7th Avenue to Central Park South, and your final mile is up behind the zoo and then over to Tavern on the Green. This is not flat. So I look at the long runs and trying to plan out, you need to be running not on West Side. No, don't run the West Side. It's great. It's pancake flat, but that's really not going to benefit you on race day. So look at the intent of your long run and really judge it by time. Get in the park. If you live here by Central Park, get by Prospect Park. Running the hills, adjusting your efforts, adjusting your speeds is always going to be advantageous. And that goes also into the training plan. But understand that when you need the fuel, I think Amy talked about it, like knowing when you need the fuel. So if I know I have a hill coming up, I want to make sure I have the energy when I get there, not when I'm on it, all of a sudden be like, now I'm tired. If I taken that gel 10 minutes ago, the body would digest it and I can go through and I'll have that little bit of a kick to help me get up that little incline as I go through. So think about your long runs, the intention. I like to also mentally look at what I'm doing on those runs and where I'm going to be on race day as well. So that can help you also kind of like, okay, mile 10, I'm coming off the FDR. I'm going to have about a 1K incline here, so maybe I want to be on a certain part of the park to kind of emulate that. It doesn't have to be exact or perfect, but it can be very helpful as you prepare to get yourself in that mindset for race day.
Okay, great. New year, new you, new intentions.
Always.
Just remember that. So Mohammed, we alluded to this a little bit earlier in the conversation. Folks may have already experienced this on their own, but injuries tend to pop up during training. What are some of the most common ones that you see for those who are training for a half marathon? What are the best ways to avoid them? Whether that is now 9 weeks out or closer to March 16th.
Yeah, running injuries span the spectrum, right? It's a long laundry list, but the most common ones, running obviously tends to be a pretty repetitive sport. So a lot of the injuries that we end up seeing as a result of running tend to be like repetitive or overuse injuries. The force that your body has to kind of absorb when you run is roughly 4 times your body weight. So I want you to imagine every single step you take when you're running on hard pavement, your body has to absorb almost 4 times your body weight with regards to the forces. So as you can imagine, your bones, your joints, your muscles, they will eventually kind of accumulate that fatigue. So overuse injuries tend to pop up, especially if someone is increasing their mileage pretty quickly or training for a pretty significant race like a half marathon. So those tend to be an issue, so you want to kind of address those if you start feeling maybe the signs or the early indications of a potential stress fracture. That's an indication to maybe scale things back. The other things we tend to see, especially in colder weather like this, if someone doesn't do maybe a proper warm-up or isn't loose enough, you tend to see a lot of like soft tissue strains and sprains. So Coach Ben mentioned that the New York Roadrunners training group is out in the park doing a tempo run. Right? So a tempo run usually indicates slightly faster running. So you want to make sure your body's prepared for that. If you take a really cold and not very loose or not pliable muscle and then immediately start trying to run fast, you're likely going to strain something. So muscle strains tend to be an issue that we see, especially in colder running or maybe novice or inexperienced runners if they are attempting to run quickly in a short period of time. So those are the things that you kind of want to watch out for and plan accordingly. So all of these are preventable issues, right? If you follow a training plan like according to Coach Ben, you can have the guidance to know how much to increase your mileage to avoid a stress injury. Or if you have the guidance of a coach, again, you can know how hard should I push this faster run if my goal pace is X, Y, and Z. So planning ahead and having the guidance of a coach can ultimately really help you prevent those issues. And ultimately, if they do pop up, accidents happen, whether it's a slip and a fall on the sidewalk because of some black ice, that's where physical therapy comes in. So one, listen to your body and listen to a coach, knowing how to prepare for a race. And then if something does come up, know when it's appropriate to see someone for it.
Thanks, Mohammed. And next, we're going to talk about mental preparation because we all need that for anything, but for a 9-week training plan, we most definitely need that. So Amy, we'll start with you. How can runners get success in their race day nutrition? I know we shared a lot of information on nutrition, and I feel like the whole session could just be on nutrition. But what does that look like for runners in terms of when to eat breakfast, when to get, gels, recovery food, all that?
So yeah, I'll review what I've already mentioned, but I think the most important thing I would say about all of it is to in order to take nutrition out of the equation, you want to write out your plan. Like, you're establishing it now, and I literally would recommend my clients to write it out, like have it pasted somewhere on your cabinet or on your counter, so you don't have to think about it. So mental preparation is not having to be overly focused on that one aspect of your running. And no new foods on race day. So I think I maybe mentioned it, but you don't want to try anything new. And I remember one time, one of my first marathons, I was running the New York City Marathon, and somebody brought out like this one kind of granola bar, and everybody started eating it. I have no idea why I ate that, but I've never had it before. Don't do that. Like, it doesn't matter what your friend tells you about a new food or if it looks good. You're not thinking clearly, especially if it's your first one. You might be a little bit nervous. So stick with the plan that has worked for you and go with the foods that have worked for you. So on race day for this particular race, is it a 7 or 8 a.m. start time? I can't remember. Is it 8?
It's wave starts.
It's wave, so
yeah.
7 or 7:30 or something?
It's like 5 waves, so over the course of like an hour, everyone should be out.
Okay, so let's say it's a 7 a.m. start, which is probably going to be on this earlier side. So you want to have your meal 3 to 4 hours before that. And the reason I say that, I wouldn't say that on a regular weekend day, but you're going to be awake and you're going to be traveling to the start. So you want to eat something 3 to 4 hours, and that could be a meal. So you're not going to feel hungry. This might be the last thing you want to do, but it's also part of the last part of this training is to make sure you get in enough carbohydrates. As I was telling you before, you want to have as much carbohydrate on board so you can preserve that glycogen. So you want to eat as much as you can kind of tolerate. So a bagel with peanut butter and maybe a banana 3 to 4 hours before. And then maybe 90 minutes before, so you're probably getting close to the start area, depending on how far you have to travel, or you're waiting there. It's going to be chilly, so you're using up more energy when you're standing and shivering, or if you're a little chilly, or even walking to the start. You're using energy, so we want to start that race with a full tank. So pretzels and peanut butter, a Cliff Bar, granola bar, anything that you've tried in the past. But I wouldn't do anything that has too much fiber. It's not the time to eat the healthiest food that you can find, the 10-grain bread. I would do white bread, something that is a simple or an easily digestible food. I wouldn't do the bacon, egg, and cheese before. I'd save that for after. But I would do a lot of a rich carbohydrate meal with some other easily digestible carbs about 90 minutes before. And then a lot of athletes like to have a gel right before they start, and that is totally fine as well. So you can bring, and I would always recommend bring an extra gel. If you think you're going to use 2, bring a third. You can drop it, or maybe you feel like you're a little hungry at the start. You can even have half of it. You don't have to have the whole thing, and I've done that before too. So have extra, you can always toss it. So I think I covered, right, race day?
Yes.
Right? Okay, good.
Yes. It was mainly breakfast and like what to do sort of race day. And you'll have more chances to listen to some information on this and ask some of our panelists. But I think it's really good to know this, this far out. So you can start preparing and not try anything new on race day, because that doesn't go well. Coach Ben.
What are you alluding to, Summon?
Huh?
What are you alluding to with nothing new?
There's a story. Maybe Coach Ben will mention it
Maybe
or
I'll
not.
share
I don't know. So Coach Ben, how do you have your athletes stay motivated with the cold? I know we talked about it already, but it's cold, it's dark, there's lots of miles ahead of them, and the days are shorter and colder. I mean, the days are getting longer, so that's good for us. How do you motivate them to keep running?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a challenge. Because I always tell people, just worry about the workout in front of you. That's the only thing that you have control of. I think sometimes people get so caught up in what's down the road. Oh my gosh, in 2 weeks I've got to run 10 miles or 2 hours. How am I going to do that? I mean, it's never going to happen. I go, don't worry about future you. Worry about present you and where you are. Keep yourself in the moment, worried about what's right there, because that's all you can do. What's behind you can't change that either. So really in your moments of your training is just looking at what you can do in that moment, where you can get the success of what you're trying to do. Where are your areas of gains? That's the biggest thing I tell my runners is, what's the biggest area of gain that can you do? It's like, I have a workout in front of me, but I don't know if I can do this speed workout. It feels really hard. Then maybe just a run is what you need. Just go out and run. Don't worry about hitting times for half-mile splits or 1Ks or doing a tempo run, because you just don't have it in you because of other things going on in your life. So what is there and what can you accomplish to make yourself feel good? Because every single minute you run, every mile you run between now and March 16th is going to benefit you in what you're trying to achieve, and that's the biggest piece. If you have a running friend, call them. I'm running tomorrow with a friend of mine I haven't seen in 4 months, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm really motivated to get up at 6:30 tomorrow morning, which in most cases I wouldn't be motivated to get up at 6:30 tomorrow morning when it's 32 degrees outside, but I'm looking forward to that. Those simple phone calls can really help if you have a friend that you can get in touch with. And keep that in mind as you go through, because those are the things that you can control. And that's the biggest thing, is you control what you can control in your raid. That's the biggest motivation you can, because then you're only worried about what's there and not what's over here, which you can't change. Because that's something people kind of, they look at it. It could be daunting. 13 miles is 13 miles, but you're going to have a great time when you're out there. And remember that you chose to do this. You paid to do this.
You made a great choice.
You know, so
Don't
ever
choice.
forget that. That's the motivation. Is is it that medal? Is it what are you looking to do? You know, and then I always joke with people on race day. Know where the cameras are. Make sure you know where they are and look good for 5 seconds and smile and I look good. And they go, oh my God, I feel like hell again. Put your head back down. But that matters. And so think about that when you're running out there. And put yourself in those positive spaces, even when it's hard, because there will be challenges. And then I will tell the story. My first marathon that I ever did, a race day story I'll give you. Nothing new on race day. Amy talked about it. We've all made the mistake. Anyone who's run the race, we've all tried it. You heard someone do it. My first marathon, mile like 18 or 19, people were giving out orange slices. It was a very hot day. That looked great. I ate the orange slice. 3 miles later, I threw it up, and my day was over. So I share that story with you. Stay with what you know. Do what you do. And right now, everything you do is a motivation to get going, because you can do this. It's hard. But I tell people, we can do hard things. Just trust yourself in what you're doing, but listen to your body, as Muhammad said, because things do pop up down the road. But always take the positive out of what you're doing, because you're doing it for yourself. This is what makes you feel good, and don't forget that.
Thank you, Coach. And I have one more question for Muhammad, and then we will go to audience Q&A, so get your questions ready. So Muhammad, for the runners who are currently sidelined by injury or who may be in the next few weeks, what would you say to them to keep them motivated and to be mentally strong for the next few weeks ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Coach Ben said, stuff happens. Sometimes it's unfortunate if it sidelines you from a race, but keep in mind, one, it's not your last race ever, right? Take care of that issue, come back more motivated than ever, and realize that in the process of rehabbing that issue or taking care of that issue, ultimately you will come out of it stronger and more prepared for your next race. So think of it more of like a learning or a growing opportunity that will better prepare you for your next race. The other thing is, like, for all of us, for a lot of us, I know running is part of kind of our identity. We identify as runners. It's a big component of who we are. So use that to fuel you in maybe pursuing another passion or another hobby or another activity. It doesn't have to be completely separate from running. Use it as an opportunity to explore another method of cross-training or another activity that will supplement your running and make you better at running when you are back to running. The other thing is, use it as an opportunity to immerse yourself in the running community in a different way. Find ways to volunteer, get involved with coaching, introduce running to a friend or a family member who doesn't run. So if it is that big of a component to you, to where you identify as a runner, it's a big component of your identity, whether you run for mental health reasons or physical fitness reasons or just to meet new goals, find a way to supplement the fact that you're not running currently by either using it as motivation to come back stronger, in the meantime cross-training or doing another activity, or find a way to continue to stay involved with the running community, not necessarily as a runner, maybe whether it's as a volunteer or as a coach or in some other capacity. But ultimately, you want to use that negative or unfortunate experience of being injured to come back stronger and learn from it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mohammed. So we will go into audience Q&A. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Coach Gemma's going to come around with a mic. Let us know if you are running this race for the first time, your name, and just please try to keep your question brief.
Hi, my name is Mitch. I've run this race a couple times, done a couple marathons in my life, but a little bit older now, so we'll see how that goes. The question I had was regarding alternative training and whether or not you felt treadmills are a reasonably effective alternative to running on the street, and if so, if there's a preference for soft deck ones or hard deck ones. And then what do you think about bicycle? Cycling like a Peloton is an example of a way of getting the cardiovascular fitness up versus going out and freezing.
I'll quickly touch on this from like the injury prevention or injury management perspective. Cycling, elliptical, really any form of cross training, one, can be a really great supplement to maintain that cardiovascular fitness while you're rehabbing an injury, or 2, if you're not necessarily injured but just trying to avoid injury from, again, the overuse injuries from accumulating miles. Again, something like running on a treadmill where it's a slightly softer deck. I mentioned earlier the amount of force that your body has to absorb. If you run on a softer surface, think of running, on a packed dirt path versus running on concrete. All of that is less force that your body has to absorb. So again, less likely to lead to an overuse injury. And again, I strongly encourage, there's an expression that I've heard before that cycling can help your running, but running won't necessarily help your cycling. So all of those forms of cross-training can be really, really great supplements. One, to either, get you through over the hump of rehabbing an injury or prevent an injury. So I definitely encourage those.
Thank you, Mohammed. I think we had a hand up over here.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. This is my first time running the NYC half. I ran the women's half last year, and I'm 60. I've just started to run, so I'm very excited. I just have a silly question. So where do you get these gels?
That's a
it.
fantastic
That's my
question. I would have asked the same at when I started. There's a lot of different places to buy gels. You can get it on thefeed.com because you can buy those individually if you wanted to try different ones. Running stores, tons of them. The one here in Lincoln or in Columbus Circle, Fleet Feet. Yeah, Fleet Feet has a pretty good selection.
Fleet Feet?
Yeah,
Okay.
Fleet Feet.
They don't sell them here, right?
No, they don't sell them here.
Yeah.
What are other? Jackrabbit has a good selection. Jackrabbit's a chain, and there's a few of them in the city. There's one down on 14th Street has a very good selection. Which one did you say? 72nd Street. Yep. So if you look up running stores, you can find a bunch of different options. Yeah, and try a bunch of them. See what feels best. See what you like. And there's different flavors. There's so many different options.
And Morton is our new gel sponsor for our races this year. Yeah. Hot news flash. It'll be out there for Head LeBeau. So Morton, that's like the
So
very
try
hot.
the Morton because then it's on the course.
Yeah, it's on the
Morton,
course.
Maurten. Those I find Urten. We can
Okay.
send you
in a
that
black
information.
tube. It's in a very discernible black tube with white writing for the non-cast.
Easier to order that.
Maurten.
Yeah, online is probably easier. Some stores have it. It's harder to find in stores, but
Very popular.
it's very popular. Anyway, so yeah, that's a great gel. I would try the gel that's on the course because then you don't have to carry it. So that's I did that for a marathon where Martin was the sponsor. And
So they're going to provide gels on the course.
one station for that race?
Yeah, at least there'll be at least one station. Usually
So
on
then
the
bring
course
one
map,
or two.
you'll see it. Usually actually it's in Chinatown. That's how we know that. That's our energy zone. We go through off the bridge.
That's what I
At least one time, and then other courses there'll be. But always check the course map to verify how many will be. But Morton will be our gel sponsor. So anything over 10 miles, we'll have those on course. So Fred LeBeau, Bronx 10,
Do Martin.
Women's Mini, not the Women's Mini,
Right.
sorry, the Women's Half, Brooklyn, the Marathon, all those fun things will be out there.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Glad
Thank
you
you.
said that. I'm glad you said that.
I'm glad Coach Ben knew all of that because I did not. Any other questions from the audience? We have a hand back there, Coach Emma.
Thank you. Hi, I'm David. First time running the half. Thank you. A little bit of nervousness and how do you wake up well in the morning? I definitely feel that my Sundays when I wake up well before the long runs, it feels very different than when you wake up a little bit tired or nervous. What can you do to make sure you wake up on the right side the day of the race?
It's a very heavy question.
I mean, there's a lot to that, but I would say, what do I tell? I would first plan it out, right? Planning, I'm a big planner. If you write it out, plan out set out your clothing. You see a lot of people taking pictures of their flat self. Plan out your outfit. Plan as much as you can. Take as much out of the equation so you don't have to think. Get to bed early. Have a really nutritious dinner on the earlier side so that doesn't disrupt your sleep. So the night before is like a high carb meal, like a pasta meal. Don't make plans with all your friends. If people might be coming in from out of town, don't try and entertain everyone. This is for you. This is the last step in your preparation for your race. So, know now. I know now what I'm eating the night before a race. So dial in as much as you can ahead of time. That can definitely help reduce it. And I guess visualize yourself through the race. Visualize yourself throughout the course. And I guess talk to friends that have done it. That can be very helpful. They can walk you through if you have any questions or things that come up. But look at all the other people that are doing it. You know, there's all these other people that are doing that having that same experience. So that's kind of cool. I always find that very settling. What else would you say?
And understand rest is all week. It's not just the night before. And that's the hard part. Anyone who's done a marathon before, we always tell really the rest you get 2 nights before your long run and for the race, that's the most important because that's what you're trying to get. I mean, it really becomes, you know, half marathons, they do take a lot of time. It's not as encompassing as a full marathon cycle when you're training. That can really take up a lot more of everything and encompasses your world. But remember, it's the nutrition part, it's the strength part, it's all the little puzzle pieces you have to think about is when you get there. And some days it's not going to be your day, and that's okay. And I think that's really what you have to give yourself grace as a runner, especially a first-timer, is that not every run is going to go to plan, and that's okay. And that also could be maybe pushing the run off for a day or even cutting the run short. That's okay. I mean, it's better to be undertrained than overtrained. So understand that if you're not feeling it, don't push through because that's when injury could become a problem. So stop and try again and reset, and it's okay because not 1 mile is going to make or break your training cycle or give you the time that you want. It's really looking at the whole, not just the individual pieces that you go through, and that's where the volume of work you're doing. You're going to run hundreds of miles over 10 weeks. If you miss 3 miles, trust me, it's not going to make a difference. So get that sleep and definitely take care of yourself.
Thank you. And one right next to you, Coach Emma.
Hey, Logan, first-time runner for a half at least. When you say long runs, that sounds subjective. I mean, I've done a 5K. You know, should I be trying to run up to 13 before the race, or
Absolutely,
how long is long?
Yeah, I mean, again, and that's why I go by time as opposed to distance. Because you're working through, and I think Amy had touched on it, maybe you haven't really touched on it, but when I look at your long runs as a runner, if I'm coaching you, I say, where are you today? Okay, I've run a 5K. How long was that long run? Was it 20 minutes? Was it 25? Was it 30 minutes? Let's begin to build you up safely over the course of 10 weeks to get as many minutes on your feet as we can. The distance will take care of itself because, again, you may have a great day when you do your longest long run where you're running very comfortably and you can get a little bit further. Maybe your longest run may not be quite where you want to get to, but it's getting the time on your feet because that's what's really going to happen on race day. So, yeah, when you look at your long run, it is subjective, but it always goes back to where are you today and then how we build the plan out. So if you use like a coach, hopefully they'll ask you those kind of questions and go through it. If you're using NYR by Runna, you would then input that information. And then there are logarithm would then create a plan that will safely build you based off increasing your miles by a certain percentage over the course of time. We're giving you up weeks and then recovery weeks, which are key. Not everything is going to continue to stack upon itself. There'll be an up and then a down and then another up and then a down and then another up, building you safely to where you want to go to. So when you look at that, usually your longest run, like your long run, should not increase more than maybe 5 or 10% as you go through over the course of time. So let's say you're doing like 30 minutes. Maybe you add 3 to 5 minutes the next week, and then maybe 3 to 5 more minutes the week after that. You do that for 2 or 3 straight weeks, and then you come down to give your body a chance to recover. And then you go back, okay, and they build back up again. And you begin to stack slowly on top of that. So obviously, for a runner who's already running maybe an hour plus when they start, yeah, their longer runs will progress a little bit different than someone who's coming from a 5K to get started. But that's where you try to get with somebody who can guide you along that space and hopefully give you some guidance and some expectations as you go through to get you to the start line in one piece.
Thanks, Coach. Do we have any more questions? Oh, we have one more right there.
Hi, I'm Clint. I started running about 2 years ago. I've done half marathons, a couple marathons. And I don't know if this is a question for Mohammed or Ben, but managing and diagnosing why get blisters in certain places and best ways to address that.
Yeah, I think that could be addressed from multiple perspectives, but if I were to approach it from, a medical perspective, I would say it could be a variety of reasons. One, it could be the fit. If it's, foot specific, it could be the fit of your shoes. It could be the material of your socks. It could be the way that you run. So not, trying to sell anything here, but this would be a great opportunity to, maybe have your gait observed, do a running mechanics assessment, figure out, is it the way I run? Or it could be as simple as, I'm running in cotton socks and they absorb a lot of sweat and that's causing a lot of friction. So a couple of different ways to approach it. If you are interested and you wanted to get a little bit more thorough diagnosis, maybe having your running mechanics assessed, or if it's something as simple as, a small modification to the equipment that you use, it could be something as simple as that.
On that note, I wear different socks in the summertime than I do in the wintertime because I sweat more in the summertime. So I wear like those little toe socks, like little individual socks for each one of my toes. But because my toes rub, I get blisters because I sweat more in the summertime. I have had to change that, so I do make modifications during the time of year to hopefully, because blisters are no fun. They are the worst.
I changed my shoes. Like that really helped.
Yeah.
Experimented with a few different types, but my feet needed more space. And your feet swell as you run, so they expand. So, the summer, that's why that summer might be a different experience than in colder, but you're still expanding after a few miles. And so maybe that's affecting you.
Thank you all. Do we have more time, Coach Gemma? I know we're a few minutes over.
One more question. Oh, wow.
One more question. Who will be the lucky person? Coach Emma, you can pick. Two more questions. There are two people right there.
There we go. Perfect.
Final question. Hi, my name's Karina. I ran this race in 22. This is my second time running it. And my question is, what would you suggest to wear on race day? I remember when I ran, I wore long leggings and then a long sleeve shirt, but then I was wrapped around a sweater around my waist for the rest of the race, and that was kind of annoying.
Was that the really warm year?
I think that was the warm year. I only run it when it's really cold, so I'm not running it this year. You guys, it's going to be warm.
Yeah, that was 22 was really warm. And understand, like, the FDR, we're on the east side of the island, so even if it's a cold day, the sun's going to be up. So understand, like, when you start on Washington and you go to Prospect Park and on Atlantic, it's all in the shade. And then all of a sudden you break out onto the bridge, FDR, now you're back in the sun, and you go back into the city and you're back in the shade. So it's really layering is very helpful. Remember, we're going to warm up. Obviously, in conditions like today, you're not going to warm up. I wore multiple layers this morning on my run, and I was still cold. But wear those layers that you can easily peel off is the best thing that you can do, and you'll acclimate as you go through. So probably what you're running in now, fingers crossed, we don't run in this in 10 weeks, but you never know. You should be pretty well. You should know kind of what you're going for, especially if you're doing your long runs at the approximate same time as your race time. Maybe you should get a good feel for how much you may need, and just kind of monitor a little bit. And I tend to prefer less on race day because I know I'm going to get warm, and always have that check bag with that nice dry clothes waiting for you.
Yeah, I'll also echo one comment that has been made multiple times: is nothing new on race day, so it's not the ideal time to try those new shoes or try those new socks. And then the other tip that I will give you is I keep a little note in my phone with the temperature of the day and what I wore during that run and how I felt. So now I have a log in my phone of, at 30 degrees, I feel comfortable in this. At 40 degrees, comfortable in this. That way, when race day comes the night before, you check the forecast and you say, oh, it's going to be 50 degrees. This is what I feel comfortable running in. So could be a tip that you could use for future races as well.
It's a pretty great tip, and I think we have our last question in the back.
Hi, I'm Maeve. This is my first half. And I'm curious, I know this is a loaded question for the last one, but what are some really important warm-up and cool-down movements, and what are your favorite stretches?
All right, Coach Ben designated me. So generally, I prefer something a little bit more active, right? Running is, for the most of us, a single-plane sport. You're moving in one direction, especially for some of these long-distance runnings. There's not a lot of lateral movements. So you want to warm up by mimicking some of those movements, right? So whether that's, some leg swings or you're going to be moving up and down and forward and backwards. So whether it's leg swings, really taking the muscles that you're going to be using to propel yourself in that run and warm them up or loosen them up in an active way. So leg swings, calf raises, squatting up and down, anything that's going to take the muscles, run them through their full range of motion. I'm not a really big proponent or supporter of just like static stretching, standing there, bending over and holding that for an extended period of time, because it provides a little bit of a stretch to the muscle for that brief period of time. And then if you're not immediately using it or immediately, activating or running, then it's just going to kind of shorten back up on you. So I usually recommend something a little bit more active that mimics the sport, right? So you see swimmers, rotating their arms up over their head because that's a movement that they're going to be doing. So they're running the joint and the muscles through that range. So same idea for running. Just kind of run yourself through a movement that will loosen everything up.
The only thing I would add is if it's your first half, it's going to be your fastest. Congratulations. A guaranteed PPR. Never forget that for my first timers. Don't ever forget it's going to be your fastest out there.
See, we end on a high note. Thank you so much, folks, for being here. I want to give a big shout out to Coach Ben, Amy, and Mohammed for sharing their expertise with us. Just want to let you know that our next panel will be on February 6th, followed by the last and third panel on March 5th, so about 10 days out from the half. Please do join us for the other 2 as well, because we'll be covering different topics relevant to that part of your training period. Also want to thank our colleagues at the Run Center and our colleagues that are making sure this recording is going to go well and it's going to go up in a day or 2, okay? So look out for that, folks, and all the very best. You're going to do great. You're going to run through Times Square. Who gets to do that, right? Yeah. Take care, folks. Have a good night.